She did not scream. That was the part no one would ever understand. The part that would haunt Michiel for the rest of his miserable life. Not the rage, not the slamming doors, not the shattered champagne glass he half expected to find embedded in the wall. None of that came. Just silence. The kind of silence that doesn't echo. The kind that settles. The penthouse sat 62 stories above the city, and from this height, the world below looked exactly the way Michiel believed it to be. Small, manageable, entirely beneath him. Floor-to-ceiling glass stretched across the entire northern wall, and beyond it, the skyline burned in cold blue and gold. Towers of light stacked against a moonless sky like a kingdom built specifically for his reflection. He was asleep by 10. He always slept well. Leah stood in the center of the master study, and she did not move for a long time. Her emerald gown caught the ambient glow of the city through the glass, deep, saturated green, that made her brown skin look lit from the inside, like something precious held up to a flame. Her makeup was still perfect. Her cheekbones still caught the light exactly right. She had gotten dressed tonight for a dinner he canceled by text at 6:47 p.m., 3 laughing emojis at the end of the message as if her time were a punchline with a built-in audience. She had not cried then either. Her deep brown eyes were glossy now. Not with grief, but with the exhaustion that comes from holding something heavy for years, and finally deciding to put it down. Her brows drew together slightly. Not in anguish. In the quiet concentration of a woman doing precise and permanent math. Her lips pressed together, trembled once, then stilled. Her chin lifted. 2 hours ago, she had walked into the living room and found them there. Michiel in his navy suit, still warm from the dinner reservation she had made, and the woman in the red dress pressed against his side like a signature on a contract. The woman's arms looped around his chest with the ease of someone who no longer worried about being seen. Her mouth curved at the corner, that particular smirk designed not for Michiel but for Leah. A performance of victory. A statement. I am here. And you already know what that means. Michael's jaw had gone tight. His eyes widened, his shoulders locked. Not because he was sorry. Because he was caught. And there is a difference. A vast, unmistakable difference between a man who is sorry and a man who is merely inconvenienced by being seen. He had told his friends 48 hours before that moment, voice rolling with a satisfaction too deep to be accidental. She has nowhere else to go. She'll never leave. Asterisk, he had actually believed that. Leah crossed the study now. Footsteps soundless on the imported marble. She opened the mahogany desk drawer and removed a single envelope. Thick, cream-colored. The kind used for documents that mean something. She had prepared it 3 days ago. She had been calm then, too. She placed the signed divorce papers in the exact center of his desk. Then she removed her wedding ring. $500,000 of platinum and princess-cut diamond. 3 years of her life compressed into a circle small enough to fit in her palm. She set it in the very center of the papers, aligned it with a precision that felt, even now, like an act of authorship rather than grief. She stepped back. She looked at the desk for exactly 3 seconds. Then she picked up the single bag she had packed and walked out the front door without looking back. The rain outside was cold and immediate. The kind that soaks through to the skin in seconds, and Leah stood at the base of the private estate drive and let it come. She did not reach for her phone. She did not call a car. She stood in the downpour in her emerald gown and she breathed, slowly for the first time in 3 years, like a woman remembering what her own lungs felt like. That was when the headlights appeared. Not one set. 4. Perfectly spaced, moving in absolute formation, armored black SUVs gliding through the rain with the quiet authority of something that does not need to rush because it has already won. They slowed to a stop in front of her, one after the other, engines barely audible above the rain. The rear door of the center vehicle opened. He stepped out without an umbrella for himself. He walked directly to her. Charcoal suit unmarked by the rain as if the weather understood its place, and extended the umbrella over her head in one seamless motion. He was not rushed. He was not performing. His sharp jawline was relaxed. His jet-black hair, swept back with effortless precision, caught the cold blue of the city lights behind him. His dark eyes found her face and stayed there, not with hunger, not with possessiveness, with recognition. The way a man looks at something he has been waiting a long time to stop, watching from a distance. "It's about time," Sun Jun said quietly, his voice steady as iron wrapped in silk. Leah looked at him for a long moment. The rain drummed against the umbrella above them. Behind her, 62 floors up, Mikhail slept with a smug smile on his face, already certain she would be back by Thursday. She stepped forward and got Intersday. She stepped forward and got into the car. Here is what no one ever sees in a story like this. The exact moment it ends. Not the departure, not the papers, not the rain. The moment. 48 hours before Leah placed that ring on those papers, she had been standing in the kitchen of the Midtown apartment, the smaller one Michiel kept for working late, her back to the hallway, reviewing a contract clause on her tablet. She was not supposed to be there. Michiel had told her the dinner was a client meeting, men only, the kind of explanation he had used for years to keep her out of rooms she had helped build. But she had forgotten her laptop, and the drive back was short, and she still had the elevator access code. She heard him before she saw him. His voice carried the easy, rolling confidence of a man entertaining an audience he had already won. The same register he used on investors in the first 10 minutes of a pitch, before the room belonged to him. "Leah?" One of his friends laughed, the sound bouncing off marble. "Come on, man, she's not going anywhere." "Obviously not." Michael's voice, comfortable, amused. "She has nowhere else to go. You think she's going to walk away from all of this? She'll never leave. She made a man out of nothing. She wrote every contract that kept his company standing. She corrected his errors in silence for 3 years, never asking for credit, never demanding acknowledgement, because she had told herself that her loyalty would eventually make him worthy of it. And in 22 words, delivered to an audience of his peers for the price of a laugh, Michael answered every question she had stopped letting herself ask. He was not afraid of losing her, because he did not understand what he had. She picked up her laptop. She walked back down the hallway. She passed the living room doorway without slowing, and Michiel looked up and saw her, and the smile stayed on his face. Unhurried, entirely unconcerned. The smile of a man who feels no danger. She smiled back, briefly, the way you smile at something that no longer has any power over you. Then she went home and started packing. She told herself the decision was made in that hallway. It wasn't. The decision had been made 100 small moments before that, and the hallway was simply the moment she stopped pretending otherwise. Michiel woke at 7:45. His mistress was still asleep. Dark hair spread across Leah's pillow with an ease that said she had stopped feeling strange about it weeks ago. Michiel moved through the penthouse in his robe, already reaching for his phone, his brain cataloging. The day. The 9 a.m. soul call. The board lunch. The thing with Davis at 3. He went into the study for a charger. And then, he stopped. He stood at the edge of the desk and looked at the papers. Her signature at the bottom. Neat. Precise. The same handwriting she used when she corrected his contracts in the margins without telling him she had just saved him from a 6-figure lawsuit. The ring sitting in the center like punctuation, like the last word in a sentence she had been composing for years. He picked the ring up, turned it over in his fingers. Then he laughed. It came out easy and full. The genuine laugh of a man without a single doubt at 7:45 in the morning. He walked back to the bedroom doorway, ring dangling, divorce papers held loosely in his other hand like a grocery receipt. "She actually did it," he said. His mistress stirred. "What?" "Leah left papers." He tossed the ring onto the nightstand, already uninterested in it. Give her 3 days. She'll be begging to come back. He put the papers in the desk drawer without reading them. He was on his phone before he reached the kitchen. 3 days, he said. What he did not know, what he could not have known because he had spent 3 years not paying attention, was that Leah had not left into nothing. She had left into something that had been waiting for her, and that something was already moving. The Maybach moved through the city like water finding a path, effortlessly, without urgency, parting traffic by presence alone. Inside, the world outside was reduced to muffled light and rain against reinforced glass. Leah sat in the leather seat with her hands folded in her lap and felt, for the first time in 3 years, like the air in a room was not being managed. Sun Jun sat across from her, not beside her. The distinction felt intentional. His posture was still. Not rigid, but the stillness of someone who spent no energy on performance, who had long ago stopped needing to signal anything to anyone. His dark eyes held hers without pressure, without agenda, the way a person looks at something they have already made peace about. "You're wondering how I knew," he said. It was not a question. "I'm wondering a lot of things." A slight incline of his head. "The Hargrove contract. 14 months ago. Your husband walked into that negotiation with a term sheet that should have collapsed in the first hour. 3 structural errors. 1 clause technically unenforceable under interstate commercial law." A pause. "It didn't collapse. I had my people review the final version. Every error had been corrected quietly between the preliminary draft and the signing. The corrections were elegant, the work of someone who understood the law better than the attorneys in the room." Leah said nothing. "It wasn't him," Sun Jun said simply. "It was never him." "I know." No triumph in his voice. No told you so, just acknowledgement, clean and direct. "I've been watching your work for 2 years. The Mecklenburg deal. The sole distribution clause that saved his company $3 million in tariffs. The algorithmic framework his tech division has been running on since 2022. He let that sit. "All yours. None of it credited to you." Leah looked at him then, fully, completely. And what she felt was not gratitude. It was the strange, disorienting sensation of being seen by someone who had done the work to look. "What do you want from me?" she asked. Not defensive, precise. Sun Jun did not hesitate. "Nothing you have not already decided to give." He placed a single card on the cushion between them. Matte black, no logo, just a building address in raised type. "A research and development facility registered under a holding company that does not exist on any public record. Legal team, operating budget, full staff, already in place. Waiting." He leaned back. "I want you to build what you were building for him, but this time with your name on it." Leah looked at the card, then she picked it up. "And in exchange?" "You let me keep you safe," Sun Jun said quietly. And it was the quietness of a man not making an offer so much as stating a fact about something he had already decided. "While you make yourself untouchable." The rain had stopped by the time the convoy reached its destination. Leah stepped out into clear, cold air, the card between 2 fingers, the city laid out below her like a problem she finally had the resources to solve. She did not look back. 6 months is a long time to watch an empire bleed. 3 months ago, Michiel was on the cover of a regional business magazine. This month, his CFO won't make eye contact with him. The boardroom on the 44th floor had floor-to-ceiling windows too, but they did not feel the same as the penthouse ones anymore. These felt like exposure. Michiel stood at the head of the table in a suit that fit the same but hung differently now. Something in the shoulders, something in the way he stood, the deflation of a man whose confidence has lost its infrastructure. And he was screaming. Not the controlled anger he used in negotiations. This was different. This was genuine, white-hot panic wearing the costume of authority. "What do you mean the sole contract lapsed?" The junior attorney at the far end of the table did not look up from her laptop. The renewal clause required a compliance addendum filed 30 days prior. It wasn't filed. Why wasn't it filed? Silence moved around the table like a contagion. Davis, to Michael's left, had the expression of a man calculating how close he was to the exit. It was always filed internally, Davis said carefully. Before. Before what? Nobody answered. Nobody needed to. The company had been hemorrhaging since February. Slowly at first. A missed renewal, a contract dispute, a distribution bottleneck his legal team couldn't untangle no matter how many billable hours they threw at it. By April, it was millions. By May, the board was asking questions he had no answers to. By June, 2 anchor investors had quietly begun conversations with other firms. His tech division went first. The algorithmic framework he had described in 3 separate keynote speeches as the backbone of Hargrove's competitive advantage, built from the ground up by our visionary leadership team. It had started throwing errors in March that no one on staff could diagnose, because no one on staff had written it. Outside consultants confirmed what the junior developers had been too afraid to say. The system had been maintained by a single intelligence for years, and that intelligence was gone. And what remained was a structure held together by people too proud to admit they had never understood it. The mistress left in April. No scene. She simply stopped appearing. The departure of someone who had sensed the value draining from an investment and moved on before the formal announcement. Michelle did not tell anyone she had left. He sat in the boardroom and looked at the faces around the table and saw, for the first time, that none of them were looking back at him the way they used to. There was a new carefulness in the room. The way people look at something they are no longer certain is structurally sound. He thought about the ring he had tossed onto the nightstand. Give her 3 days. It had been 182. Find her, he said. Stripped of performance, bare and urgent in a way that made Davis look up sharply. Leah. I want her found. Hire whoever you need. I don't care what it costs. I'll make the calls, Davis said quietly. He thought finding her was the answer. He had no idea that finding her was the beginning of the end. The investigators were good. It took them 11 days. The report came back on a Thursday morning. A single page. A venue name, a date, and a photograph taken through tinted glass with a telephoto lens. Blurred at the edges, clear enough at the center. Leah. The venue was the Obsidian Gala, an annual event with no public calendar, no social media presence, and an invitation committee that Michael had once tried and failed to access. Attendance was restricted to a category of wealth and influence that made Hargrove Capital look, in context, like a mid-level regional player. It was not a place you snuck into. It was a place you were chosen for. Michelle stared at the photograph. Everyone assumed she left to survive. What she actually did was build something that made his entire world look small. His first thought, and this revealed everything about the precise shape of his arrogance, was that she must have found someone. A new man. Someone who had offered access in exchange for her company. He could not construct any other explanation for her presence in that room because the version of Leah that lived in his mind was still the version he had built. Brilliant, yes, but dependent on proximity to his platform, contingent on his name. He had not updated the file. He was working from a version of her that had never been accurate. Get me an invitation, he told Davis. It's invitation only. The committee. I don't care about the committee, get me in. It cost him. Not money, pride. The specific currency of a man who has always assumed doors would open for him being forced, for the first time, to knock. Davis called in a favor that would not be easy to repay. The invitation arrived Friday afternoon, 4 lines on matte black cardstock, an address and a time. Michiel held it and felt the forward lean of a man who has located the source of the problem and is moving toward it, certain his arrival is, in itself, a solution. He told himself he would offer her a deal. Professional terms. He was not going to beg. He told himself that on Friday. He told himself that again Saturday morning while he had his suit pressed. He repeated it in the car on the way to the venue, city lights moving past the window. The same city lights that had framed a very different car ride 6 months ago, a car ride he knew nothing about. He had never once considered that she had not left into nothing. He had never once considered that something had been waiting for her on the other side. He straightened his tie in the darkened car window, feeling like a man arriving to reclaim what was his. He had never been more wrong about anything in his entire life. The Obsidian Gala occupied the entire top floor of a building that did not advertise itself. No signage, no red carpet, no photographers at the door. The invitation told you where to go and when to arrive, and after that it was assumed you understood how to conduct yourself in a room where everyone present had long since stopped needing to be impressed. Mikhail noticed it immediately. The quality of the silence, not the silence of an empty room, the silence of a full one. The hush of 200 people who had nothing left to prove, and therefore produced no noise trying to prove it. The room moved in low conversation and the slow geometry of expensive things, crystal-catching candlelight, jewelry that did not announce itself, fabric that fell without effort because it had been made for the specific body wearing it. He stood at the threshold and adjusted his jacket. He scanned the room, for the highest concentration of influence, for the architecture of who was talking to whom. He was good at this. He had built a career on reading rooms. It took him less than 2 minutes to find her. She was standing near the northeastern windows, the city skyline behind her in full illumination, surrounded by 4 people who were each, individually, the kind of person Michiel had spent years trying to get 15 minutes with. And they were not simply standing near her. They were turned toward her, the forward lean of people receiving something they find valuable and do not want to miss. Leah was breathtaking. The gown was black and floor-length, architecturally precise, couture built for a specific body by someone who had understood that body as a subject worth studying. Her shoulders were bare, her posture was unhurried. At her throat, diamonds arranged in a cascading design that caught the light every time she moved, not ostentatious because it did not need to be, because the woman wearing it had not put it on to be seen, but because it belonged there. The way everything in this room belonged to the people in it, by merit of something that could not be purchased in a hurry. She was laughing. A real laugh, unguarded, head tilting slightly to the left, and Michiel felt a sensation he did not immediately recognize, because he had never experienced it in relation to Leah specifically. He felt outpaced. It lasted 3 seconds before his ego reabsorbed it, reclassified it, converted it into something manageable. She had found someone. Obviously. The necklace, the room, the invitation. Someone was financing this, and it would end the moment he reminded her of the conversation they needed to have. He straightened his collar. He moved through the room. People stepped aside for him without looking at him. He did not notice the distinction. He reached her from the left, and the group around her registered his arrival before she did. A subtle, collective recalibration, the micro-adjustment of people who have noticed something entering their radius that does not belong. Leah turned a half-second after they did. She looked at him. Her expression did not change. That was the thing he had not prepared for. Her absolute stillness. He had expected surprise, discomfort, the involuntary tell of a woman caught somewhere she should not be. He had expected her to need managing. He had not expected her to look at him, the way you look at a problem you solved months ago and have not thought about since. Leah. He said her name at volume, too loud for the register of the room, and the nearest conversations paused at the edges. I need to talk to you. Mikhail. Her voice was even. The single word contained no warmth and no hostility, the verbal equivalent of logging a known variable. Outside, he said. Lower now, reaching out and closing his hand around her arm. We need to talk. Tonight. Leah looked down at his hand on her arm. She did not pull away. She did not raise her voice. She looked at his grip with such complete and unhurried calm that it took him a moment to identify what he was actually seeing in her face. Pity. Not for herself. For him. "Let go of my arm," she said quietly. "And go home. You don't get to—" His voice climbed, the panic he had been papering over for 6 months finally breaching the surface. "You walked out on a marriage, on a company you helped build. You have an obligation. The company you built on her work." Someone in the surrounding quiet said, very quietly. Michiel could not identify who had spoken because the room had shifted around him, a subtle redistribution of bodies. And he became aware, through the back of the neck, through a change in the density of the air, that something had changed behind him. The string quartet stopped, not gradually, not at the end of a phrase. Mid-note. Total. Immediate. The silence moved outward across the room like a pressure wave, until 200 people were standing completely still, every conversation abandoned, every glass lowered, all attention converging on a single point. The point was behind Michiel. He turned around. Sun Jun had not rushed. That was the detail everyone in the room would remember. Not what he said, not what happened after. The fact that he had not moved quickly, had not cut through the crowd, had simply been somewhere else and then been here, as if the space between had contracted around his intention. He stood 2 feet behind Mikhail in his charcoal suit, hands at his sides, his expression the same expression he wore in the back of the Maybach, in the rain, in every room where the outcome had already been decided, composed, unhurried, the face of a man who has never needed to raise his voice, because every room he enters already knows what he is. The silver-haired sovereign wealth partner had lowered his eyes. Around the room, one by one and then in clusters, heads inclined, not the bow of submission, the incline of acknowledgement. 200 of the most powerful people in the city confirming, without being asked, that they understood exactly who they were in the presence of. And Michiel was standing in the center of all of it with his hand still around his ex-wife's arm. "Take your hand off my wife," Sun Jun said, calm, not loud. "Before I take your arm off your body." The words landed without drama, without theater, not a threat. A scheduled outcome that could, at this moment, still be avoided. Mikhail's hand dropped. He did not decide to release her. His hand simply opened, acted on by something more immediate than decision. He looked at Sun Jun, and Sun Jun looked back with the patient, specific attention of a man who has been waiting for this exact moment for a long time and never once doubted it would come. "I know who you are," Michiel said. His voice had dropped to a register he had never used publicly before, uncertain, stripped of the authority that had always been available to him. "You don't have anything to do with this. This is between me and my—" "She is not your wife. She has not been your wife for 6 months." Sun Jun's voice did not change. "And she was not your asset before that, though I understand you treated her as one. Whatever she's told you—" "She has told me very little about you," Sun Jun said, and there was something almost gentle in it, the gentleness of a surgeon naming a diagnosis. "You are not a subject she finds particularly interesting anymore. I, however, have known about you for some time." He reached into the interior pocket of his jacket and removed a phone, turned the screen toward Michiel. A document, pages of it, dense with figures and legal language, the specific typography of debt instruments and acquisition filings. The sole distribution contract, bought at default, 6 weeks ago. He scrolled. The Mecklenburg secondary debt, acquired through a holding company in February. He scrolled again. The operational credit line your CFO refinanced in March, the one he told you had been restructured with a new institutional lender. A pause. That lender is me. Michiel stared at the screen. The room was very quiet. Here is what Michiel never understood about men like Sun Jun. They do not move in anger. They move in geometry. Every acquisition, every bought debt. Every strangled supply chain had been placed months in advance, with the patience of someone who already knew where this evening would end. "Your company's debts have been mine for months," Sun Jun said. "I have been waiting for the correct moment to call them. That moment is now." "You can't," Michelle's voice cracked. "You can't do this here, in front of— I can do it anywhere. I chose here because you came here. You chose to walk into this room, find this woman, put your hands on her, and say the word obligation." The word landed like a gavel. "So we will finish it here." He produced a second document from inside his jacket. Physical. Folded once, printed on paper that had clearly been prepared some time ago and had been waiting in a pocket for the right evening. He held it out. Michelle did not take it. One of Sun Jun's men stepped forward and placed it in Michelle's hand without ceremony. "That is the formal notice of debt. Acceleration for all acquired obligations. Effective immediately. Your legal team will have the corresponding filings before midnight." Sun Jun held Michelle's gaze for the duration of one level breath. "Hargrove Capital is finished. You have the weekend to inform your board." The silence in the room had a texture now, the particular density of 200 people witnessing something they would describe in careful detail for years. The papers slipped from Michael's trembling hands, fluttering to the polished marble floor. He stared at Sun Jun, the reality of absolute, irreversible ruin crashing into him all at once. His company, his billions, his legacy. Gone in 60 seconds. His legs gave out. Michiel hit the marble floor, dropping straight to his knees in the center of the obsidian gala. The arrogant, untouchable CEO was completely gone. In his place was a pathetic, broken man, gasping for air as a sob tore through his throat. He crawled forward, reaching desperately for the hem of Leah's custom gown. "Leah, please!" he begged, tears streaming down his face in front of the 200 most powerful people in the city. "The algorithms. You can fix them. You can fix the code. Please, tell him to stop. I'm your husband." Leah looked down at the sobbing man at her feet. Her expression did not change. There was no anger, no vindication. Only the cold, absolute finality of a door locking shut forever. "I left my wedding ring on your desk 6 months ago, Michelle," Leah said, her voice echoing perfectly in the dead, silent ballroom. "You should have kept it. It's the only asset you have left." Sun Jun didn't even blink. He looked down at the trash on the floor and nodded once to his men. The 2 security guards moved forward, grabbed the sobbing, ruined billionaire by his arms, and physically dragged him out of the gala while he screamed her name. Then, gradually, the string quartet resumed. A single violin first, then the cello, finding the phrase that had been abandoned, picking it up without apology. The room breathed again. Leah had not moved. She stood exactly where she had been standing when Michelle arrived, by the northeastern windows, the city behind her in full light. She had watched everything that followed with the same composed stillness she had carried out of that penthouse 6 months ago, and if there was something moving behind her eyes, something that looked like the long, slow exhale of a weight finally, irrevocably lifted, it was her own, private, and she owed it to no one. Sun Jun crossed the space between them without hurry. He stopped in front of her and looked at her the way he always looked at her, with that unhurried attention that had nothing in it of possession and everything in it of recognition, and he took her hand. He turned to the room. "I would like to introduce," he said, his voice carrying without effort across the quiet, "the architect of the Mecklenburg Framework, the author of the Sole Distribution Clause, and the founder of Meridian Applied Systems, which, as of last quarter, holds more active fintech patents than any private firm in this region." The pause that followed was deliberate. The pause of a man who has been waiting a long time to say the next sentence correctly. She has been the most capable person in every room she has entered for years. It is past time this city knew her name. He brought her hand to his lips. "Leah," he said simply, "Queen of the Syndicate." The room did not erupt. That was not its register, and this was not that kind of crowd. But something moved through it. A collective acknowledgement. A shift. The sound of 200 people deciding simultaneously that they needed to know this woman, to be in whatever room she occupied next. The silver-haired sovereign fund partner began to applaud. Alone at first. And then the room followed, and it was not the applause of an audience. It was the applause of a room meeting its equal. Leah stood in the light of the city she had helped build, wearing diamonds she had earned, beside a man who had spent 2 years learning the shape of her intelligence before he ever said her name. And she felt, moving through her chest, something she had not felt in longer than she could accurately measure. She felt correctly placed. She felt like herself. She smiled, and it reached her eyes. And it was nothing like the smile she had given Michelle in a hallway 48 hours before she packed her bag. That smile had been a door closing. This one was everything that came after. Some people will take your silence for weakness, your patience for fear, and your loyalty for a lack of options. They will look at everything you have quietly built for them and call it theirs. They will bet, with complete confidence, that you will never leave. But grace has a limit. And the moment you know your worth, truly, know it, in your bones, past the point of needing anyone else to confirm it, everything changes. You don't leave in anger. You leave in clarity. You leave with your files backed up and your name on the work and a single bag in your hand, walking out into the rain towards something that has been waiting for you this whole time. Clarity is not loud. Clarity is a ring placed in the center of a desk at midnight by a woman who has already decided. And if you have ever poured yourself into someone who could not see what they had, who laughed when you left, who assumed you would come back, who only missed you when the lights started going out, then this story was for you. Because here is the thing about diamonds. They do not stop being diamonds because someone failed to recognize them. They just wait for the right hands. Drop a crown in the comments if you know Leah deserved every single thing that happened in that ballroom. And if you want to see what she builds next, subscribe right now, because the Meridian story is coming, and you do not want to walk in late.